Did you know that more than half of people who buy a home theater projector end up returning it within the first year because the brightness just can't compete with everyday lighting? That statistic always catches me off guard because you'd think a home theater would be a darkroom thing, but most of us are watching in living rooms that have windows, lamps, and a TV-sized TV turned off. I've been testing a few models that claim they're bright enough for daylight, and the Optoma HD28HDR actually surprised me by staying vivid even when the blinds are half open. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the most noticeable thing about this projector is the 3600 lumens it throws. In plain English, that means you can crank up the volume, dim the lights, and still see a crisp, colorful picture without straining your eyes. I set up the unit in my family room on a Sunday afternoon, and the image stayed bright enough that my kids could still see the details on a nature documentary without moving the projector away from the wall. That kind of brightness is handy if you live in a sun-filled house or just don't want to make a habit of pulling heavy curtains every time movie night rolls around. Another big plus is the HDR compatibility. When you feed a 4K HDR source into the HD28HDR, the projector expands its color gamut and brings out deeper blacks and brighter whites. I tried it with a recent superhero film that had a lot of neon lighting and dark alley scenes, and the colors felt more lifelike than what I'd seen on my older 1080p TV. That's not just about a prettier picture, it actually makes you feel more immersed, which is a big deal if you love getting lost in epic storylines. Gamers will appreciate the built-in gaming mode and the 8.4 millisecond response time. Those numbers translate to less motion blur when you're chasing a fast-moving enemy in a first-person shooter, and the refresh rate can push up to 120 Hz when paired with a compatible console. I plugged in my PlayStation 5 and ran a few demo levels of a racing game, and the motion felt smooth enough that I didn't feel the usual lag you get on cheaper projectors. For a home gaming setup, that responsiveness often makes the difference between a fun session and a frustrating one. If you're worried about long-term costs, the lamp life is another aspect worth noting. Optoma rates the lamp at around 15,000 hours, which means you could be watching movies nightly for several years before you need to replace the bulb. Compared to the recurring expense of a TV that might need a new panel after a few years, the projector's maintenance schedule is pretty forgiving. It's a good fit for anyone who wants a cinema feel without constantly budgeting for replacements. Installation is surprisingly straightforward. The unit comes with a decent lens shift and keystone correction, so you can mount it a few feet off the floor and still get a rectangular image without having to tilt the whole thing. I hung it from a ceiling bracket in my workshop, and after a quick calibration, the picture lined up perfectly with the screen. The setup didn't require a ton of fiddling, which is a relief if you're not a tech-savvy person and just want to press play. One more practical detail is the input flexibility. Even though the projector is a native 1080p device, it accepts a 4K signal and downscales it nicely, which means you can hook up a modern streaming box, a gaming console, or a Blu-ray player without losing any of the source quality. The HDMI ports support the full HDR signal, so you're not stuck with a dull SDR image just because of the connection method. Now, let's keep it real with a quick rundown of what I liked and what could be better. On the plus side, the brightness makes it usable in a lit room, the HDR handling adds depth to the colors, and the fast response time is a solid advantage for gaming. On the downside, it's not a true 4K projector, so if you're hoping for native 4K resolution, you'll see a bit of softening around fine details. Also, the built-in speakers are pretty basic, so you'll likely want an external sound system for a full theater experience. All in all, the Optoma HD28HDR feels like a balanced choice for someone who wants a versatile home theater projector without breaking the bank or dealing with a steep learning curve. It delivers enough brightness for everyday lighting, handles HDR content with decent color depth, and keeps the lag low enough for serious gamers. If you're ready to upgrade from a TV or an older projector, this model gives you a solid mix of performance and practicality. Thanks for hanging out, and if you're curious about grabbing one for yourself, the link is below.